welcome to American Dream Latin Souls. I'm Daniel Ortiz, and today my guest is entrepreneur David Perez. David, welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Now, David, you are a typical serial entrepreneur, and we're going to talk a little bit about your story. You are the president and founder of Seamless Medical Systems, which is an exciting business, one that's totally unique, and I think it's going to take the medical system by storm. But before we get into your business, we'd like to find out, what is your American dream and what does it mean to you?
Well, thank you, Daniel. It's great to be here. My father immigrated from Bolivia in 1950, and he was a doctor. And so I was born and raised in New Jersey in the 1960s and 70s, and I saw what his version of the American dream was as an immigrant. And, you know, I use the word immigrant with pride. You know, oftentimes in today's world, the word immigrant is sort of meant as a derogatory word.
So you're first generation American?
Yeah, I'm first generation. Okay. My mom was American. And, you know, what I saw my parents model for us was, you know, a life that was self-determined through hard work and creativity and intelligence. And my parents always said to me, you can do whatever you put your mind to. That was sort of my mom's saying. My dad would always say, do what you love and be the best, and you'll be successful. And that's what I really have kept in my mind, you know, as I've you know, grown up and pursued my life.
Certainly has paid off, you know, as an adult. And we talk about in America, you know, the Hispanic experience. So we tend to live in two worlds. We have the Hispanic Latino culture and American culture, but you literally have lived in two cultures. Your parents, one is Hispanic Bolivian and the other is, you know, American. So we want to talk about how that influenced you. Let's talk about a little bit about your background. You were started a couple of businesses in New York, including Lumina Americas, which is a digital marketing agency serving U.S. Hispanic and Latin American markets. You've been working with Hispanics for some time now. Before it was in vogue.
Yes.
We talked about before the 2000 census, where America discovered there were Hispanics, Hispanics here, right? You also have started a business called Latin Force Ventures, which is an internet incubator. The Latin Force Group, which is a U.S. Hispanic-focused marketing services company. And you've worked for various large companies, including, or with large companies, including Kraft Foods, Nickelodeon Networks, MTV, the NFL, Nike, Wells Fargo Bank, and several others. And you've actually been raising money for businesses as well. You've raised over $30 million of private equity from institutional investors, including J.P. Morgan, Chase, and Goldman Sachs. So you definitely have a background as an entrepreneur and a business mind. So going back to your American dream, what is your American dream and what does it mean to you? Well,
for me now, as you said, I've been through a variety of types of businesses, and just about a year ago, while I was looking at my next venture, I had sold my interest in my previous company, Latin Force. I was wanting to do something that, one, was innovative and progressive, something no one had done before, and that was very much 21st century in its aspect, and would be meaningful to a large swath of the population. You know, the businesses I had before, the business was meaningful to me, my family, my employees, and my clients. And this, I wanted to reach out further and make a positive impact in people's lives. And to me, I wanted to do something. I was inspired by what Steve Jobs used to say, which was to put a dent in the universe. And I didn't know what that was going to be. So I did a lot of exploration. I thought about opening a wine bar. That didn't meet that criteria. I came this close to buying a fly fishing business here in town, which was really more of a hobby. And then I really looked at alternative energy, which met a lot of that criteria, but it was definitely something that was much farther afield than what I was used to. So, you know, my version of the American dream is to, you know, be known for being an innovator, be known for making a positive impact on the larger part of society, and leave a legacy of that. And so that's really how I got to starting my business.
Okay. You know, I find that's interesting because a lot of entrepreneurs, it's really not about themselves. You know, and you look at society's view of entrepreneurs, they think, you know, well, they're just after the money, or they have a certain typical version of a business owner. And of course, in film, who's the villain in a lot of the the program. It's usually the banker, the business owner. Right. But a lot of entrepreneurs really want to make a difference, a positive difference in the world, and they have a creative way of doing it through a business. So that's interesting. So when did you first become aware that you had an American dream? You were born in the States, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so when did the idea of an American dream filter into your mind?
Well, again, seeing it from my parents. And when I was 8, my parents took my brothers and I down to Bolivia for the first time.
And your father, again, is from Bolivia?
Yeah, my father is from Bolivia. And we sort of did that every August for many years. And my dad was from a very, very humble background. And he was
a medical doctor?
He's a medical doctor. He was a surgeon in New Jersey. So I grew up as a privileged, some would say spoiled child in New Jersey. And we'd go to Bolivia and see a very different life. And I thought that was very important in terms of my grounding and understanding as a human being, to see that not everyone was driving around in a Mercedes in New Jersey. And
so that was normal for you, really?
Yeah, to see those two worlds. And we, in our house, we ate Bolivian food. My dad listened to Bolivian music. We had artwork from Bolivia. And kids would come in and look around the house and say, wow, this is different. I grew up in a town where everyone's name was Kolakowski, Zanini, or Zazowski. There were no other Perezes in that town. And so I always felt, and this really came more as I got towards college, that I was a Jersey boy with un corazón boliviano. And I've always felt that duality.
So you definitely have lived the two worlds and experienced the two worlds. So do you believe that being an Hispanic influences your business now?
I think it does in some ways. I think it...
and if so, how so?
Yeah, it's... I want to make a difference. I want to make a mark. I view... and I don't mean this sort of in an egotistical way, but I want to be a role model, because I see that, particularly in New Mexico, there need to be entrepreneurial role models who are Latino here. So I would say that's how it influences. I think from a business perspective, I bring a more, I think that's where the Hispanic culture I bring to the business side, where we have a much, I try to strive to create a warm, open culture within my business. So I think it kind of bleeds into that.
Let's talk about your business, Seamless Medical, and I'm really excited about it because it's something that is going to change a lot of people's lives. So tell me about Seamless Medical.
Well, I was on this path to do something innovative. I didn't know what that was going to be. I was trying to figure it out, and then one day I was sitting in a doctor's office with the paper, filling out all the paper forms and getting frustrated.
Been there, done that.
Yep, filling it out again and again and again. And I looked around the waiting room, and there was Rachel Ray on the TV with the volume shut off, a pile of uninteresting magazines, all torn and with stains of who knows what on them. One was 4 years old.
Oh, of course, doctors' offices are.
Right. Brochures which were uninteresting, and I had my iPad in my lap. And that was the moment. And I looked at the iPad. It was an epiphany. And I said, why aren't all the paper forms on the iPad? Why aren't the brochures with all that health information on the iPad? Why aren't the magazines, current magazines, on the iPad? Heck, Rachel Ray, she can be in there too. And that was the moment, and I thought, well, here you have paper, 18th century, and the iPad, 21st century. Closing that gap was the opportunity of a lifetime I've been looking for. And so I found a local doctor in Santa Fe, talked to him about it. He liked the idea. We created a prototype of a patient form, had a local kid build it, and he used it. A
local kid build it, I love that.
Yeah, and
21st century medical device or system that's going to change the world, and you get some local kid. And that reminds me of, when VCRs came out and nobody can work them, so we always got the young kid in the famly would do the VCR.
Right, figure it out.
Right, so you got a kid that's...
some guy in his 20s, right? Kid. And give it to the doctor, and he, after one day using it, he said, this will transform my practice. It will pay for itself in a week. And he went out and bought 2 more iPads for his waiting room. He had 1. So after that, I did some more homework, and I researched what's the size of the market? How many doctors are there in the U.S.? And there's about 840,000 practicing doctors in the U.S. There's a total of 1.7 million healthcare providers. They see close to 5 billion patient visits a year. So I said, no, there's no.
Now, that had to be exciting when you did those numbers.
Well, that was one that was exciting. Then I thought, well, then I looked, is anyone else doing this?
Right. Well, I talked about that earlier when you discussed your business. It seems so obvious. It seems like, and I think a lot of ideas, they're in the ether. And, you know, people tap into it at different times, but you actually did something about it. So it seemed like it's such an obvious product. Why hasn't this been done before, and what makes yours different?
Yeah, I think, well, a couple of things is, you know, like you said, a lot of people may think of an idea, but they don't execute against it. And that's part of what makes a successful entrepreneur. Is 2, thank you, Steve Jobs, for the iPad. If it wasn't for the iPad, it would not be possible. The other technologies were too difficult to use. 3, the timing of the adoption of electronic medical records in medical practices and the technological advancement with medicine. When you walk into waiting rooms, some of them look like you're in the 1970s.
Right.
So, and then I did my homework. There was nothing out there. I put that prototype app on the App Store and had 6,500 downloads in a dozen countries in 8 weeks without one word of advertising, one word of marketing, no press release, nothing. It told me there was demand. And that's when I started the business. Okay.
So for our audience, what does this do? What is it actually? It's a software program. What does it do?
Yeah, Snap is an iPad-based software program that replaces the paper forms patients fill out in medical waiting rooms. That's one thing. It transfers all that patient data digitally to the office management system. But it also delivers health information that's relevant and targeted to each individual patient. We also have magazines and games on there, so it helps pass the time in the waiting room. It really helps, you know, there's a movement today about engaging patients in their own health care. And what better time to do that than the hour or so that a patient's dedicated to being in a medical office. Instead of sitting there staring at the screen or looking at a magazine with Britney Spears with her head shaved off from 4 years ago, now they can learn about their diabetes, their asthma, their parents' Alzheimer's. And that's revolutionary. No one's done that.
Right. Well, anybody that's has spent time in the doctor's office can immediately see the practical application of that. And you know, the population's getting older now, so a lot of us are taking our parents to the doctor's office. So it's not just the patient, it's the patient's family as well who are sitting in the office and filling out those forms. So,
you know, as you said, we can all relate to being patients, whether ourselves or children or our parents. And, you know, I like to liken it to remembering the 1970s when you went to a grocery store and someone was tapping in the price and reading it from a can of food. And then the barcode scanner was invented. Overnight, the stores that didn't have barcode scanners were rendered obsolete. Snap has the potential to do that.
Yeah, that's very, very, very exciting. So let's go back to being an Hispanic entrepreneur, and it's great to see an Hispanic being at the forefront of 21st century technology. So tell me, what traits do you believe as an entrepreneur makes you successful and distinguishes you between, let's say, a business owner or someone who works a 9-to-5 job?
Well, first I'd say there's no reason why Hispanics shouldn't be creating these innovations. It doesn't matter who, the person's ethnicity or race or background. It's completely irrelevant. I think innovation comes from people who are creative, smart, and dedicated.
Do you think that's something that can be learned, or is that innate?
I think a lot of it's innate. I see my 8-year-old son, Sebastian, and he is a born entrepreneur. You know, I had a paper route. I was selling lemonade. I sold light bulbs for the Boy Scouts. I polished my dad's shoes for 25 cents a piece. I had this burning desire to earn money and have independence. For me, money just represents independence and opportunity. It's not a number. You know, it's not something I want to pile up somewhere.
Not like a goal you set somewhere.
No, it's freedom and opportunity. So I think, you know, the ultimate, I think the key aspects or traits of an entrepreneur are first creativity, the interest in self-determination, and passion and confidence. And I'm really unemployable, to be honest.
A lot of entrepreneurs are. I mean, I know I've had jobs, JOBs before, but they didn't last very long because you know, entrepreneurs, we're a different breed. I mean, it's a different type of breed, and we tend not to get direction well because we generally have better ideas than the people we work for if we do have a job. So
absolutely.
So what would you do to encourage that type of, or develop those traits in kids today, or anybody watching this program, and maybe they feel like they're an entrepreneur at heart, but they're not living it? How would you develop that?
Well, I think role models are so key.
Okay.
You know, and
did you have a role model growing up?
well, you know, my dad was a doctor, but he was always very entrepreneurial in spirit, and he was always thinking and talking about different business ventures, and it would focus back on Bolivia.
Okay.
He wanted to open up a poultry farm. He was very good at seeing opportunities that others didn't see at the time. What he lacked was the ability to execute against them. Okay. And being a hard-working doctor, delivering babies and doing what he did.
Time is a factor.
Yeah, so he definitely inspired me that way, and he had a burning desire to prove himself and improve himself. And I think that's a critical trait. So I think role models are key. And this is what I'm working on here in Santa Fe as well, is to create the ecosystem of role models, mentors, education around entrepreneurship. I think that we need more of that type of education, even down in the high school level.
Sure.
And also for sure in college. There are some colleges like Babson in Massachusetts has a great entrepreneurials program. I think we need that in the University of New Mexico. You see that in Stanford. And
I always find that's a sort of an oxymoron, because there's several colleges have schools of entrepreneurship, and there's professors who teach entrepreneurship. And you know, if you look at that, our iconic entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, or even going back into the industrial age, you know, Henry Ford and Carnegie and those type of guys, most of them didn't even finish college.
They weren't formally
educated.
educated.
The older guys, you know, in the industrial age, they were not formally. Certainly, Henry Ford was not well educated, but you know, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, they dropped out of college. So that seems like an oxymoron. College, you know, school entrepreneurship and professors on entrepreneurship. I think that's a big oxymoron.
Right. Well, but I think I agree with you halfway, because I think that we are born. We are born as entrepreneurs. However, the passion and creativity, I think, are two of the cores. However, there's a lot of skill sets you need to be successful.
Yes.
To be a successful entrepreneur. So understanding finance, understanding management, you know, building teams, marketing. So I think there are tools that you need to learn along the way. So I think those can be taught.
Okay, those are definitely important, but most entrepreneurs that I know of, they farm that out, right? They hire the marketing guys, they hire, because the ideas is what excites entrepreneurs for the most part. Right. So yeah, so I think, you know, definitely we need a lot of skills as entrepreneurs. We tend to be our own worst enemy at times, because a lot of entrepreneurs have more ideas than they have time or money, you know, to pursue. So let's talk about the challenges of being an entrepreneur. It's not the easy path in life. Entrepreneurs, you know, are not necessarily interested in 30 years with a gold watch and retirement at the end of the day, which is fine. You know, we need there's all kinds of people in the world. So what are the challenges that you face as an entrepreneur, and how do you overcome them? Right.
I think you know, the mind of an entrepreneur is kind of a strange place, at least according to my wife. You know, we have to live this duality of being completely confident in our abilities moving forward, yet always questioning the path we're on and saying, are we doing right? Can we do something better? Is there a change that we need to be adopting to? And so having that ability to shift and be open to understanding, I think, are two of the key challenges. You know, the others are around getting the help you need. I think being open to filling in the gaps of knowledge that you don't have. But, you know, in order to launch a business, you kind of have to be able to do it all, you know, to get started. Right. You know, I've heard some people say, well, gosh, aren't you afraid of the risk you're taking? Isn't this a risky endeavor? Yes. And I don't perceive this business as risky. There's risk. Yeah, entrepreneurs see risk differently. Very differently. You know, for people who are not entrepreneurs, risk is something to be avoided. It seems like at all costs. So an entrepreneur, I don't know if that's an adrenaline thing, or, you know, some entrepreneurs have been called crazy, and I think that's in a good way, because you have to be, a lot of entrepreneurs, they start businesses that are considered crazy at the time.
for a lot of us, and you take that risk. So, yeah. So tell me more about the risk.
Well,
aspect.
yeah, I think risk is so subjective. You know, I think what's tremendously risky is going to take a job at a corporation because you have no self-determination. You're subject to other people's whims and political environments.
Right.
So for me, I always know I can create a living. If I needed to, you know, I was a stockbroker. That was my first job. That's very entrepreneurial, as you know.
Sure.
You know, I
cold called 100 cold calls a day.
Right.
Yeah.
26 years old, sat down with a phone and a phone book.
Yep.
And made a living. And my training class, 20% was washed out in the first month.
Oh yeah.
You know, so I enjoyed that a great deal.
Is that right?
I didn't see it as risky. I don't see what I'm doing now as risky. I have a family of 4. I'm not making a salary. I know it's going to be incredibly successful. So some people, everyone has a different perception of risk. So that's why I don't think, I think the entrepreneurs are more born than not because the perception of risk is different. And confidence is important, but not naivety.
Right.
And
there is a balance.
There's a balance. You know, I kind of a good metaphor is skiing. You know, I've grown up skiing, and some people think, you know, skiing down a slope like this is risky. But one, if you have the skills, you know how to do it. It's really your mindset that says, I can do this. I can make that turn. I will not hit that tree. You know what I tell my children when we're skiing in the woods? Don't look at the trees. Look at the spaces between the trees, and then you'll be fine.
Right. Well, they say with race car drivers is don't look at the wall, because if they look at the wall, they hit it.
That's where you're going to go.
Right. Right. And you know, the confidence is an important factor, and that's something else you really can't teach. It comes through overcoming risk because you become more confident, and of course your background,
testing
childhood,
yourself.
yeah, and overcoming the challenges. But there's also in the business people and the entrepreneurs that I coach and work with, and in my own experiences, there is a knowing. The only way I can describe it as a knowing when you have an idea, and ideas go through 3 phases usually when it's introduced to the mind. First phase, it's rejected as impossible. Second phase, it's perceived to have some merit, and finally, it's accepted as inevitable. So, but there's an entrepreneur when they have the idea. There's a knowing confidence that comes with it, oftentimes with no evidence to support it. And where do you think that comes from? Because that's the trait that entrepreneurs have. They know their idea is going to work.
Right. It's intuition. And I think that's, if anything I've learned, you know, as I've gotten older, is trusting my gut, trusting my gut, trusting my gut.
Very important.
One is that. And then once you're able to do that, I believe in manifestation.
Okay.
And 12 months ago, Seamless Medical was an idea, a couple of PowerPoint slides, and me. Today, I've raised over $1 million. We have 13 people working full-time, and we have enterprise software that's operating and being installed in medical practices, and we're the first to do this anywhere. That's pure manifestation.
And you knew that, you saw that in your vision.
I said that's when people talk about vision,
right?
You know, and I had that vision in my mind from a year ago, and it's becoming reality today. Right. And it's pure manifestation and a lot of hard work. I had 4 hours of sleep last night. Okay. Because I was working till 2 in the morning. Right. So I think it's that balance, but always, again, not being overconfident. And you know, entrepreneurs have to listen to people. They have to look and see what's going on and remain to be flexible. And because if you don't, you drive off a cliff. Oftentimes, yes. Yeah. And there is a balance. And see, this is why I think we talked about, you know, schools or colleges of entrepreneurship. Those are traits you really can't teach. Yeah. You know, and I remember the famous saying from Henry Ford, you know, that he had the Model T or the Model A, and he had various versions, and they were all black. And people said, you need to change the color, we need to do this. He said, we can have any model you want as long as it's black. So there's a stubborn streak as well, and finding that line between staying with your gut, not changing what you know is right, when everybody else is telling you, no, you need to change this. And so, you know, I guess that's something you just develop as an entrepreneur. And that takes courage. Experience. Yeah, I think you know, a guy like Steve Jobs, you know, had that in a bullheaded way. You know, for me, I've learned in my different businesses that I need to trust my gut. Right. I have a vision for this, and I do listen to everyone. Sure. I'm not a dictator, but I have to listen to what I believe the vision is, and that's what I'm trusting in this endeavor, and it hasn't failed me.
And at the end of the day, that's what makes an entrepreneur successful.
Right.
At the very end, is that determination and knowing, especially when other people are saying, go this way, and you say, no, I'm going to stick with that direction.
Right.
Okay. So have there been any particular challenges? One of the challenges that I hear a lot with entrepreneurs is, the taxes, the paperwork, and I mean, we all deal with that. But is there any personal challenges you've had, and not just in Seamless Medical, but just in your path through entrepreneurship? Because I believe it's a journey. At the end of the day, it's a journey that we're on, and how we overcome those challenges that face us. Yeah,
I think it's definitely a journey, and I love the journey. I think that's what I enjoy about it. I'm very fortunate, and I have this balance of being creative and visionary, and I can actually see the path that needs to be done and execute against that path. So setting up a corporation, doing all those kinds of operational things, I can get done. It's not what I enjoy. It's not the best thing. But in order to kind of get going, I can do that. Now I've got a business partner who's our chief operating officer. He's a great balance to me. So, I think some of the challenges have been, those 3 o'clock in the morning wake-ups and saying, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Am I doing it right? Is this right? Raising capital is a challenge.
I was going to ask you about that.
Is a challenge no matter what. And, I've successfully done that in my past career many times. I'm doing it now. It's still not easy, no matter what anybody tells you. It's not easy. And
so you've raised, for this particular product, in the past you've raised millions of dollars.
Right.
Is that for your own company or for
Those
for
are
others?
for my companies, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 previous companies. I've taken a very different approach to this, was what's being termed as efficient capital model. And also I'm in a different position. I could afford not to raise money to pay myself. Through my previous success, I've been able to invest my own money into the company. And but I've raised $1 million so far. I'm raising another $2 million, which will get us to the market.
Is this from private individuals, or is it the equity markets, or what's the vehicle?
From private individuals, and I've been talking to some venture capital firms now. I tend to like to avoid them.
Yes, and for our audience, tell us why.
Oh, the vulture capitalists?
Well, they want a big percentage of your business.
Yeah, they tend to undervalue what entrepreneurs have accomplished. They want to control. And they have this kind of strange notion that money's worth more than ideas and energy. Money is a commodity. And
it's fungible.
Yeah, there's lots of money out in the world. There are very few compelling ideas, teams, and opportunities.
Right. Well, and as an entrepreneur, your idea and your business is your baby. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs, they have a very strong connection, visceral, emotional connection a lot of the times, and we tend not to want to give it up and not to want to be devalued by markets or press or whatever it is, because only we can understand our business in a way that nobody else can. So in the minute that we have left, what would you share, or what advice would you give to anybody, an entrepreneur who's got a vision, who has an idea, and would you inspire them to pursue their dream?
Well, I would say anybody who's got an idea to start a company or invent a product or start a nonprofit or even create a social movement, pursue it. Pursue it with all the energy you have. Do your homework. It's most important to be smart and knowledgeable about your space, about the competition, about the environment, where you are. Be flexible to make changes as you move along the way, and learn from other people. But follow your gut instinct all along the way. And most importantly, never lose confidence in your ability to succeed. Because if you don't have that confidence, then that's going to be a point that will undermine your ability to be successful.
Okay, great. Well, great advice, and thank you for sharing your American dream with
Thanks
us.
for having me, Daniel. It's been a pleasure.
Great, and we look forward to, in the future, sitting in that doctor's office and not having to fill out paperwork, and we'll think of you next time.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today on American Dream, Latin Souls. Be sure to visit us on the web at latinosuccess.com.